Chris Lee and Blake Lovell here to preview Mississippi State and Arizona for Week 2 action, rematch of a game that State won on the road a year ago. Both these teams opened their season in nice fashion, each of them beating FCS opponents. Arizona won, 38-3 over Northern Arizona, and Mississippi State beat Southeastern Louisiana 48-7 in fairly impressive fashion. And Southeastern Louisiana is not one of those FCS pushovers, for whatever that's worth. But coaching change for Mississippi State. State picked right up where it left off from a 9-win campaign a year ago. And the data on this one, Mississippi State, a 13-point favorite with a 57.5-point over-under. That's an implied final of 35-22 in State's favor. By the way, this one started, I think, at 9.5 and went up quickly. So I don't know what was up there. ESPN's FPI has got Mississippi State a 10-point home favorite, and Jeff Sagarin has got Mississippi State as an 8-point home favorite. By the way, you can catch this game on the SEC Network at 6:30 that night. Blake, let's go right into it. Arizona's offense versus Mississippi State's defense. That was not a good matchup for Arizona a year ago. Arizona averaged 7.6 yards per rushing play in Week 1. State gave up 4.4. Passing, Arizona averaged 10.4 per attempt. State gave up only 4 yards per passing play last week. That's with losing Emmanuel Forbes to the NFL's first round. Blake, how do you see this matchup when Arizona's got the ball?
Yeah, here is the natural light comes in, Chris.
Nice.
It sounds like we went from, again, guys, if you're watching this, haven't watched any other videos, we've had technical issues all across the board. So we're trying to use some natural light over here to get a little light for this particular one. But yeah, I mean, I think you look at it right, and Jaden DeLore, like I said, last year, 23-45, 3 interceptions, and again, it's just going up against this defense that I think we said coming the season. A lot of people talking about what the Mississippi State offense is going to look like with just some of the changes and everything, but um, defensively, we didn't really have a lot of questions. We said, look, I mean, obviously Forbes isn't there and such anymore, but still, that's a very talented defense. 2 all SEC linebackers, and so that's the challenge. Is can DeLore and this offense play a lot better than they did last year, and limit those mistakes, because that was the key last year and why Mississippi State was able to win the game the way that they did. And this is a really good wide receiver group. I think last week 3 different guys caught touchdowns. Not surprising, because I think they've got a really deep group at wide receiver. Running game still to be determined, I think, if they can get anything out of that. But of course, DeLore can give you that too, just based on what he can do, just with his versatility and such. But yeah, I mean, I think you just want to see, if you kind of just go off last year, which it's a different season, but if you look at some of the things that Mississippi State did really well defensively, which, by the way, they're going to be looking at, what did we do well last year in that game, and what are some of those, schematic type things we can try to pull off here to really confuse that offense. They're going to try to do the same kind of stuff, and it's just a matter of, can Arizona kind of learn from those mistakes, because I still think this is a very, very talented and aggressive Mississippi State defense, very physical. We always talk about that. And so, yeah, I think Arizona, even with some playmakers in that passing game, I think they've got their work cut out for them.
Yeah, Watson and Johnson, Mississippi State's all-SEC linebackers, were tremendous a week ago. They combined for 14 total tackles, 2.5 for loss, 2.5 sacks, and 3 forced fumbles. Look, you get that out of those guys again, and Mississippi State probably walks away with the win. But offense was where I was kind of eager to watch Mississippi State a week ago also, because they're changing systems to some degree. Of course, they changed head coaches with Zach Arnett after the tragic passing of Mike Leach, but the offense kind of picked up in a different way. We're not used to saying Mississippi State averaged 8.1 yards per rushing play. That's what it did a week ago. They've made Marks now less of a pass catcher and more of a runner. He did very well in that role a week ago. Yards per passing play, Will Rogers actually averaged a little more than he did on average a year ago, 7.3 yards per throw. Arizona's rush defense, though, gave up 2 yards a run last week and 6.2 yards per passing play. So some interesting dynamics here in the matchup when State's got the ball.
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, Will Rogers had a big game against them last year and looked great. But I think it's, you still want to keep seeing how this offense is going to continue to evolve, in a we said, I think sometimes you can certainly over exaggerate the significance of changes and those kind of things, but it is completely different because just from who's at the top, right? Like it's not a Mike Leach led offense. And so I think that was, one of the big storylines coming into the season. But I think you just kind of look at it though, and you still got Will Rogers there, you still got Jaquavius Marks there, and um, I still think that's what they're building off of. They're building off the strengths of those guys, and that's why I think you're going to still have a lot of those same principles in what they can do. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm again, it's just I think you said it like sort of eagerness just to see. It's one thing to do it against Southeastern Louisiana, nothing taken away from them, but now you do it against a power conference opponent like Arizona, and just seeing how things continue to evolve there, and sort of what they can do. I think on that side, but we talked about it going into the season, right? It's just when you have an experienced quarterback in the SEC, that is a very valuable thing. And just having someone like Will Rogers, who's been in the spot many, many times, and again played very well against the same team last year. Even if Arizona replaced pretty much the entire defensive line after they really struggled there, but they've got some inexperience, I think, overall in the secondary. And so this is another one where I think if you're Mississippi State, you would have to like the matchup just in terms of how it breaks down with Will Rogers in the passing game going up against this Arizona State defense.
Yeah, another thing to note, Mike Reich, the Vanderbilt quarterback who transferred, who won a couple of big games for Vanderbilt a year ago, I think we all kind of scratched our heads when he wound up at Mississippi State because it just didn't seem to fit. Well, guess what? They made it fit in week one. He ran 5 times for 95 yards, had a 53-yard run. So you will see Mississippi State maybe bring him in situations where it makes sense. All right, Blake, let's wrap it up. Again, Vegas has Mississippi State a 13-point favorite. FPI has Mississippi State favored by 10. Sagarin is going with an 8-point line there on his predictor model. I think Mississippi State wins, and I think we feel like State's got a chance to maybe stretch this into double digits.
Yeah, as always, not professional bettors. I'm sure our betting expert, Brian Edwards, will give his thoughts on this game. We'll have that later in the week. We're recording this on Tuesday. But yeah, I mean, I always hesitate when you get that extra half point if you're looking at it just from an odds standpoint. Again, not a professional bettor, but 10.5. I would probably love it a little bit better if it's at 10. Then you at least get the push off of that. But yeah, I like the setup for Mississippi State. I really do. It's a home game. We kind of saw them, flex their muscles last year on the road against the same team. Obviously, different season, but I like the way this sets up for Mississippi State because I think they were one of those teams we said coming into the season, maybe not getting enough talk just based on the fact that they have it's Zach Arnett taking over. We haven't seen him in this spot before in terms of an entire season as the head coach. We saw him in one game, understood completely different circumstances, but I think there was a lot you could take away that you liked about Mississippi State in week one. And I think just again, the matchup sets up well. I want to see Arizona kind of prove it against this Mississippi State defense. They really struggled to do that last year. And so, too, the penalties, right? Talk about the difference. Very disciplined approach with Zach Arnett. Only had 1 penalty last week. Mississippi State. Arizona had 11 penalties last week. And so, if you're coming into Starkville, we know it's going to be a rowdy crowd, Chris. All those things at play. I just think it sets up really well for Mississippi State. So I'll pick the Bulldogs to win this one. Not real sure about the spread. As we never are completely in that regard because we're not professional bettors. But I do think Mississippi State take care of business here.
Yeah, and the spread, you're seeing 10 today? Because I saw it opened at 9.5 and it went to 13. I don't know if that was a typo somewhere, but
I'm seeing nothing but 10s.
Okay, so that must have been a typo somewhere.
Yeah, maybe. Unless I'm missing something, I see nothing but 10s. So
yeah, I was checking covers. Okay, we're going to preview every single football game involving SEC and FBS teams this year. Best way to get all those, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. Those things help our analytics. For Blake Lovell, I'm Chris Lee. We're Southeastern 14, and we'll see you again soon.